My name is Viraf Mehta, and I'm a social anthropologist. I work on human rights and business, that paradigm that became the United Nations guiding principles in 2011, although I started about 2006. And the second was immersing myself in a lot of public policy with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, entities like the National Human Rights Commission, in drafting India's, with other colleagues, India's first set of responsible business guidelines in 2011 and updating them as the National Voluntary Guidelines, which became the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct, the National Action Plan on Business Human Rights, and of course, the entire notion of non-financial reporting for the last decade. All that has happened in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, is that the National Voluntary Guidelines have become the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct as an adverb, RBC. And the new framework is called BRSR instead of BRR. And based on the findings of the analysis of at least 5-6 years of BRR reports, plus new that have come into the national guidelines, a committee was established by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which after a whole year's very solid work, submitted not only a new guideline, but certain suggestions and recommendations for how it should evolve, as well as processes that we have to have in terms of the integrity of these reports and so forth. That was submitted to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in 2020, August, and thereafter SEBI have adopted that framework as a mandatory thing from FY 22-23. And this year, if some leadership companies want to adopt a new format, they are welcome to do so. The National Guide for Responsible Business Conduct, NGRBC in short, comprise 9 principles. Each of those principles comprise core elements, and these core elements yield the questions that are in BRSR. From the point of view of taking an input into the format of BRSR, we are very conscious that stakeholders such as, number one, investors, number two, the financial sector, use these. And there's every evidence that these are the two players who we hope will use the data more in their own investment decisions. And it's that type of usage of data which we hope will amend and improve corporate behavior in terms of corporate conduct, in terms to these guidelines. I think if you're talking about business media, without naming any, I think this is a unique opportunity for you to analyze what different business sectors are doing. The BR is not a ranking system or an index. It wasn't designed to do that. It's equally designed to help companies assess their gaps in reporting. So I think investors, the financial sector, banks, and media are two critical point of view of reporting on companies on their non-financial performance, social, environmental, ESG performance, and using BRSR.
Let's take a look at the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report format and what information journalists can get from the report. I'm going to call it the BRSR report, and this is how the BRSR report released by SEBI is going to look like. Let's head to sections. Section A of the report gives details about general disclosures by a company. So, basic details about a company, information about products and services, its operations, and employee details. This right here, part 4, employees, is important for those looking for data on inclusion and representation of women in a company. That's a pro tip. You'll find details about differently abled workers and employees, number of females, both in board of directors and key management positions. Part 5 of the report has details on holdings, subsidiary and associate companies, including joint ventures. Part 6 has details on CSR, corporate social responsibilities of a company. If you're looking for transparency and disclosure related compliances, head straight to Part 7. Let's now come to Section B. This section has details on management and process related disclosures. Ideally, businesses demonstrate here the framework they have put in place as per the National Guidelines of Responsible Business Conduct Principles. If that's a mouthful, we'd recommend a quick read of the chapter on the policy framework. The link is in the description of this video. Now, this is section C, which focuses on principle-wise performance disclosures. If it's categorized as essential indicators, then these are mandatory for a company to disclose. And if leadership, then they may be released voluntarily by a company. The key essential indicators under Principle 1 are this one, details on fines and penalties paid. Point 5 has details on directors and employees against whom action was taken. And point 6 gives details on complaints with regards to conflict of interest. Let's now come to Principle 2. This is important for those looking for information on sustainability and safety of a company's products. Some of the key essential indicators are investment in technology that the company may have taken to improve the environmental and social impact of products, or details of processes when it comes to reusing, recycling of electronic and hazardous waste. If you cover gender and health, you must keep an eye on Principle 3. The key here is measures taken by the company for the well being of employees, including health insurance, maternity leave, and paternity leave. Point 2 has details on retirement benefits given to the employees. Point 5 has details on return to work and retention rates of permanent employees and workers that took parental leave. In Principle 4, you're going to find details on how responsive businesses have been towards their stakeholders. Principle 5 is important for those covering businesses from the human rights lens. Key indicators are details on minimum wage paid to employees and workers, number of complaints made by workers under categories like sexual harassment, discrimination at workplace, child labor, forced labor, and wages. Let's now check Principle 6. It's important for those covering businesses from the lens of environment or climate change. The essentials have details on total energy consumption by the company, disclosures related to water. Point 5 and 6 have details on air and greenhouse gas emissions. Point 10 has details if the company has operations in or around ecologically sensitive areas where environmental approvals are required. Here's a pro tip. This data can be used to verify environment clearance claims by businesses. And finally, Principle 9, which gives details on consumer grievances. This was a lot, right? But I'm hoping it was useful. Please let us know in the comment section below. Remember, there are step-by-step guides on reading other public documents and financial statements on our module, Making Businesses Responsible. It is a superb resource if you want to equip yourself with skills on how to cover businesses and their impact on communities and the natural world. We'll see you again very soon.